So important, and that talks about the needs.
Yes. Talking about needs, not only communication level, but just as far as research, as far as statistics are concerned, a woman needs affirmation, maybe above all else.
Okay, when you say
speaking,
affirmation, what does that mean?
Like I was sharing a moment ago, being valued, appreciated, cared for, significant. You said it, the most important person.
Right.
That's her need. And the husband, of course, needs to be respected. And when you get both trains together simultaneously, you got one locomotive, one track, going to one destination. You both get there.
And hopefully the husbands are watching and the wives are watching and they're taking notes.
I hope so.
And
I hope that many people are watching also that maybe aren't married yet but are planning to get married.
Right.
This is important. You can save years of trouble, difficulties. You said many times, a moment ago, you said many times the wife wants to feel like she is the most important person in his life. Well, what I'd like to say to the audience, if I could, is please don't take 25 years to learn it like I did. I'm going to share with you in 25 seconds what took me 25 years. Please be a lot smarter than I was. I had to learn over a process over time. But I've learned that God is my first loyalty.
Right.
But my wife and my children are my first ministry. Everything else comes after that, as being a good steward. And so I try my best to help my wife feel like she is the most important person. And when that happens, I am meeting a very, very, very important, critical need. And we're talking about strengthening and healing relationships. That can strengthen, that can heal, and that can protect. That can build a hedge about your relationship.
And that's probably the most important part of the relationship, is communicating the needs that they have. A lot of times the mate, and I'll use either the husband or the wife, will say, well, they should know. They should know what I like. They should know what I need.
I'm so glad you said that. I don't know whether you've been reading that lately or whether it just came out of your heart.
No,
I'm so glad you said that. Maybe that's God. This is what you'll often hear. And if anybody here in the audience has ever said this, I'm not picking on you. But many times they'll say, well, if you really love me, you'd understand. If you really love me, you would know what I need. You wouldn't have to ask. But I say to the wives and those the young ladies that will be married one day is, please remember, they don't know. They must learn it and often be reminded over an extended period of time before they finally get it. That's the way the male gender tends to be. That's the way I am. But once they finally begin to learn and understand and practice, okay, how to meet your needs and what your needs are, then they really do want to meet them because they got married hoping to stay married. Thank you.
Okay, that's so good. Once again, this is Dr. Brian Dutremaine. He is with the Abundant Grace Counseling Service at 381-4394. And we'll be right back with some more. My name is Margie Gonzalez. I'd like to thank you for staying tuned with us. And this is the Community Report. We're talking to Brian Dutremaine. He is a doctor. He's got his doctorate, and he's a licensed professional counselor in Texas. If you'd like more information, he also does substance abuse for adults, so you can call this number, 381-4394. And we've been talking on healing and strengthening loving relationships. So we're going to continue this topic, and thank you for staying with us. Go ahead, kind of go over everything.
Yeah, let me review very quickly. We talked about the different levels, about 5 levels of communication that you often see, and usually in most marriages, you only see the first 3 levels. One is cliches. An example, hi, how are you doing? Nice day today. Facts. Well, I really feel that you ought to do this because it'll be better for you. Okay, I'm sorry, correction, got ahead of myself, it's opinion. Let me back up a little bit. Facts is like, oh, it rained 3 inches yesterday, or I believe tomorrow this is going to happen. Opinions is, I really think you ought to do this because you benefit from this, or I feel something else should have happened. I feel this way about this and that. Opinions. Then feelings. Now feelings. This is where the communication stops after opinions with most marriages. But when you enter into feelings, that's when your heart begins to become unguarded. It begins to open up. And wives are frequently, it's just built into them. It's built in. I believe God builds it into women from birth. And that's a fact that they want to communicate on the feeling level.
I always say the man was asleep at that time.
He was. He was. When Eve was made, he was sleeping, and that was the beginning of the whole... No, just kidding.
That's what I always say.
But But men, I included, had to learn this. We all need to learn this. But loyalty has dividends that are worth more than gold. You get everything gain, nothing to lose. But when you start entering into feelings, now your heart is opened up both directions. And now the woman begins to have one of her primary needs met, intimacy and communication. She will no longer say, we just can't communicate, because now she is touching base and sharing. And, you know, I had a thought, too, right before you asked that question. I had a thought. Sometimes, though, married couples will hear this, or they'll read it in a book or magazine, or, oh, this is what we're going to do. Let's do it. Starting tomorrow is what we're going to do. And they jump in both feet without practicing. And then something happens, and they figure, hey, I didn't like that. We got an argument. So they back off to the opinions and the facts again, the cliches, and they're afraid to try it again. Try it in small steps. Just a few minutes set aside every day just to talk and share your feelings.
Yeah.
Don't try to make a marathon out of it, but in time you get better at it, just like riding a bicycle. And pretty soon it's
you have to learn it, like you said.
Learn it.
You have to learn it.
Learn it.
What about the couples, like, let's say they're talking, you say they're opening their feelings and all that, but then the spouse or the mate will turn it back on the other person, and then it's just going back and forth. How do you deal with that?
Well, it depends on the situation, but sometimes in marriage counseling, I give them a rule: no history. When the marriage needs healing in it, I tell them from between sessions, no history, meaning no history that's negative, that's hurtful, that hurts, because they're just delaying any healing. They're prolonging the pain. And so when you talk about things, leave out the negative history.
Right.
The other thing is you have I statements and you statements. This takes practice too. But sometimes you have to express need that's something that is important to you. But I use I statements, therefore I own the feeling. Now I'm not saying you made me feel that way, because now you're attacked. I can't think of an example at the moment, but like you do something, let's say, and you say, when you do this, I really get angry. You make me angry. Right away, you're defensive.
Right, exactly.
But if I say that when this happens, I feel this way, now you're taking ownership of it, and the person's less defensive. Right. And if they happen to be in that mode of trying to learn communication, you're going to say, aha, I think we're communicating now. So we can,
yeah.
I'll listen.
Also, I think one of the important things is when that person says, you do this that bothers me and I don't like it, then that other person has the right to say, should say, you know, I take ownership of that. I realize that this is what I do. And I know one of my biggest problems was I'll cut my husband off in the middle of talking. You know, I'm going to be open and honest. I'll interrupt or whatever. And he said, you do that. And I said, you know what, you're right, I do. I take ownership of that. But see, that's the first step in the healing process, is to say, yes, I do that. Not to go back and attack him and say, you know, you're doing this, though. And see, I think that's real important, don't you think?
Yes, I want to say something else, too. The level, when you start communicating in the area of feelings and needs, okay, we talked about earlier, using the level of communication of feeling, sharing feelings, to resolve issues really should be, even if you have to hold back some, maybe 10% of that level of communication. Let the other 90% be sharing things that wouldn't offend or, you know, provoke defensiveness or anger, whatever, because you're still bonding, you're still touching, you're still developing an intimate bond between each other by sharing your vulnerability, your openness, your realness, your genuineness. And so you're strengthening the relationships later on when you get into that time where you do have to say, I really feel upset when. The person won't immediately shut their spirit.
Exactly. And not only that, the respect. You know, a lot of times, you know, you will want to lash out or say something to make that person hurt for what the hurt that they've done. You know, and I think this is real good in communication, is to always remember to keep the respect in the marriage and say, you know, they're a person. Let's not try and get back or get even or make them hurt the way they made me hurt. I think those things are real important in communication.
Yeah. And I think, too, as a general hallmark of a loving relationship, I encourage the husbands to remember that the primary need, generally speaking, the primary need that the wife will have is to feel loved.
Exactly.
She needs to feel loved. With that comes respect, but it's love, feel loved. It's very important, I encourage the wife to remember that the husband, generally speaking, His primary need is to be respected and then loved.
Now, how
The Bible even tells us that. I'm sorry,
Go ahead, go
the
ahead.
Bible, I'm on a roll. Go
ahead. That's fine. You're doing good.
The Bible tells wives to what? Respect their husbands. See, God knows. He built us. He made the clock. He knows how it works. And then he says, husbands, love your wives and give for them the way Jesus sacrificed for the church.
Okay, now how would you get the husband to understand that she has to be just as important and that she has exclusivity to him?
I think he has to just understand and accept that that's the way God made her.
Okay.
He can't talk her out of it, and she won't change. She has a God-given need to feel like she's the most important person, really, to him on this earth.
Right.
A woman has no problem at all, I believe in my heart, accepting that a man loves Christ first.
Right, right.
And she can do the same. It's not something where you feel threatened by. But after that, if she feels like in this relationship, as far as relationships go on this earth, in this life, she is the most important person in his life, he will have a woman that will stand by his side and love him and honor him and respect him. And she won't have to even think about submission or following or being by his side is what it really is, being his partner at all. It will come naturally.
Right, right. And see, not only that, like if they have children, how does that affect the relationship, let's say the father with the daughter? How would that, because the marriage is real important. If you have a strong marriage, it's going to go on to the children.
Yeah, well, you're talking about modeling, in a sense. Modeling is very, very powerful. Especially, I think, my own personal thought is the most powerful example of modeling on earth is modeling a loving relationship. Because love is something everybody has a need for, they hunger for all their lives. And it starts with small little children all their lives. And so when they see their parents modeling love, respect, affirmation,
communication,
exactly, all these things, then trust me, they are little computers that are picking up this program. And so there may be some speed bumps and some rough times during adolescence because they're busy trying to learn how to fly out of the nest. And you have to let them fly out, but you have to be ready to catch them, that kind of thing. That's part of adolescence. But the more loving relationship they have modeled, I believe the smoother the adolescence is going to be. Because they won't be confused on relationships. They have a place to go to, a safe haven, where there's love and acceptance unconditional, when the peers they know are directing them the wrong way. It can be some wonderful things. I want to add quickly, I know we're talking to a lot of homes with only one parent.
Right.
Well, the one parent can model a loving relationship with them and with other loved ones, and then take them to the house of God where they can see people modeling a loving relationship with Christ.
Sure, there's other ways, because there are a lot of absent fathers for whatever reason, through death,
absence, sure.
illness,
divorce.
And the father cannot take that role. So that is just as important, but they can go to a church,
yes,
get into a mentoring program even, where the father figure can come in, or the mother figure, because there are mothers that have passed away.
Finding a church that has, the size doesn't matter, but has a youth pastor
right.
that can model a lot of these things. So it's kind of a vicarious type of modeling, but nonetheless, they're being molded, their hearts are being shaped. Just because they're adolescents, we think they're almost adults. Well, in a sense they are, but in a sense also they're very vulnerable and very moldable, and so they're very receptive to these things, and they're watching closely. Trust me.
Yes. The relationship with the father and the daughter is real important. We were talking right before the show about this book that I read about the father-daughter relationship, and that was saying that, if the father doesn't tell their daughter, that she's beautiful, that she can, be anything that she wants, he has to be the one to encourage her. Because if he doesn't do it, then when she starts dating, then the first guy that comes along, she's just going to fall head over heels. But if the father instills that as a child, when they grow up, the daughter's going to say, oh, my dad tells me that all the time. They're going to have that security, don't you think? Yes, and you just made me think of something, too. I think I shared with you earlier before the show began. I have a theory, but the research does verify it, even though they don't specify it this way. I have a theory that just as though mankind has a void for God, a daughter has a void for a certain affirmation, a certain acceptance, and a certain love from the father. That is so true. In fact, it's an ongoing process, because if they can get unconditional love
by their earthly father, they find it easy to feel loved by their heavenly Father.
Sure, sure.
They can make spiritual life so much richer and so much easier. So what you're talking about is a father filling that void. And he does by not just communicating, as we talked about before, on different levels, like emotional level and so on, a need level, but again, giving her affirmation, showing her respect. If the father tries to pull out a chair for his daughter and open a car door for his daughter and remarks about how nice she looks, he doesn't mention the curl that she's got to take out of her hair, but he knows she's trying to comb it, and you say, well, gee, I like the way you comb your hair. Be sensitive that way. Then when she begins to interconnect or begins to interact with other peers of the opposite sex, she's going to have a standard, she's going to have a plumb line of how she has a right and deserves to be treated.
She's going to have a standard.
A standard, yes.
To go by. That's
yes.
so good.
Yes, and then if someone says, well, that standard's not wrong, says, well, I not only believe it's right because Daddy was like that, but look at what it says in the Bible. So therefore, she's very solid in her expectations for future marriage, roles in the marriage.
The foundation's going to be there.
The foundation will be there, and she'll be able to love her husband the way her daddy loved her mother, or the way her daddy loved her.
Okay.
That's another whole ballgame.
Yeah, we can go on and on. Thank you for staying tuned with us. We ran out of time.
Thank you. Enjoy.